Okay, hi, welcome, and we are delving into the next part of our session on, or our study on Revelation, and we're going to be looking at Revelation chapters 4 and 5 this morning. So, I hope you're looking forward to it. We're going to be studying these two chapters, which are key, actually, in the whole book of Revelation. And somebody has called it a revelationary diptych. Sounds good, doesn't it? What's a diptych, I hear you ask? Well, I've seen triptychs. What a diptych is it's like a two-panel painting or tapestry, which is, they're linked together because there's different aspects of the same picture, if you like. I've seen triptychs, Elizabeth and I did in Spain, and of course they're three-panel, but the same picture, if you like, but with different aspects, and that's what we have got here. I was very interested in Spain, how every triptych that we saw, there was the person who'd commissioned the painting was in there with his family, he'd got himself in, so it might have been a spiritual painting, it might have had something about God in there and Jesus and whatever, but in the corner there was the man who had commissioned the painting and spent the money. He had to be in there. I do find that quite amusing. But anyway, back to Revelation 4 and 5. So it's a picture of the throne room. In Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, we get John called up in his vision into the throne room in heaven, and what he sees is worship. What he sees is is God on the throne, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, surrounded by all these creatures and so on who are worshipping God, and that is central. And you see similar scenes about the throne room in like Isaiah 6 and Daniel 7. Isaiah 6, I saw the Lord lifted up, seated on a throne, and his train filled the temple. These sorts of things. These are quite common. And Revelation 4 Revelation 4 is a theophany, and Revelation 5 is a Christophany. A theophany, Revelation 4, is a picture of God, and a Christophany in Revelation 5 is a picture of Christ. And you see the two, and of course they're linked because Jesus is God, as we know. So, it's a vision of worship, and worship defines us, doesn't it? What we worship, who we worship, defines us. Peterson puts it like this. He says, people who do not worship, talking about God, are swept into a vast restlessness, epidemic in the world with no steady direction and no sustained purpose. It's true, isn't it? If we don't worship God, we can get swept up into all sorts of things, but worshiping God gives us a focus for our lives. And here's a good thought too. Somebody once said that what you spend most time doing is what you worship. And I think that could be a bit harsh because there are things we have to do, but it's good to ask ourselves, are we putting our time, our effort, our money into things that are not focused on God? Are we worshipping something above him? There are so many things that get worshipped these days, and it can be something in the media, it can be a political personality, it can be all sorts, and they become worship idols in sport, whatever. But are we worshipping King of Kings and Lord of Lords? Is he number one in our lives? Does he take up an important part? That's worth thinking about. Anyway, so we have two images that take up this picture, and we've got the throne of God and we've got the Lamb. The word throne, appears 43 times from chapter 4 to the end of Revelation, and the word Lamb appears 28 times. So they are key images. And we have here a paradox, and this is central to the whole book of Revelation. Everything points towards this, and then it's almost like everything flows from this then down. We have the throne of God, and this is the seat of power and authority. That's what the throne symbolizes, God in charge, power and authority. But we have also the Lamb, the slain Lamb, slain. So it's almost like, it looks like defeated, but no, the Lamb actually won victory by being slain. So that's the paradox. What does that mean for us as Christians? Quite a bit, actually, and it's worth looking at. He shows power. The Lamb shows power through apparent weakness. And in one sense, that's the way the church is called to be, to lay its life down. And in apparent weakness, we actually conquer. That's a central part of Revelation. If we don't get that, then we miss everything else. We're looking for battles and fighting and so on. But actually, it's about laying lives down. That's key. Anyway, So yeah, chapter 4, the throne, we're showing where true authority lies in the throne. And we've got, in this passage, we've got like a return to Eden. It's like how humanity is called to rule and reign with God. That's part of the picture that we have here. And God is wanting to bring us back to that place of Eden. You've also got other pictures here from the Old Testament. You've got things like you'd get in the picture of the burning bush in Exodus 3, and then and also the giving of the law when Moses went to get the law, and you look at Exodus 19 to 24. Some of the same sorts of images that John is drawing into this, inspired by the Holy Spirit. So we've got we've got God on the throne. He's got a white appearance, surrounded by beauty as well as the presence of the sea. Fire, smoke, lightning, angels, all these things, you get that, don't you, in some of these other pictures, these Old Testament pictures. Look at Daniel too, look at Ezekiel. You get some of those same images repeated as well. And what are the creatures around the throne? Well, you've got the living beings, first of all, heavenly beings, who many feel represent creation, the whole of creation in those living beings. You've got 24 elders. Well, some say these are the 24 priestly orders. You get that. Look at 1 Chronicles 24 verses 1 to 9, I think that is. But probably more likely it's the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles. Put the two together, 12 and 12, 24. There you go. It's like, this is the church. This is the people of God, okay, around the throne worshipping. They're wearing white robes. We've got white robes. You've got a picture there of purity, victory, and worship in the white robes. Golden crowns. Why golden crowns? Because humanity is sharing in God's reign. It's all there. It's what God has for us. And what are they doing? Worshipping ceaselessly. As Michael Gorman says, worship is the heartbeat of the cosmos. Chapter 5. It's interesting, in chapter 5, John hears that about the Lion of Judah. This lion. So he hears about the Lion of Judah, but when he turns to look, he sees a slaughtered lamb. He doesn't see a lion, he sees a slaughtered lamb. The lamb that was slain. And this is a shock. This is a paradox, and Revelation is full of shocks to try and wake us up and get a point across to us. God overcomes the world, not through a show of force, but through the suffering and death of his son. Isn't that interesting? You've got pictures here from the Old Testament, like pictures of the Passover lamb in Exodus 12, and you can look at some of the other pictures of the suffering servant that you get throughout Isaiah. There's certain passages there called the suffering servant passages, referring to Jesus, of course. So Isaiah 53, for instance, verse 7, you could look at around there, The lamb is the messianic lion who has 7 eyes of perfect perception or wisdom. 7 meaning perfect or complete, okay, these numbers are important, and 7 horns of perfect power. Horns stand for power. And the power of the lamb takes 2 forms. They take the form of a slaughtered lamb. That's one power. Isn't that interesting? Dying and showing his power through his death, and the power of his word. Remember in Revelation chapter 1, the sword that comes out of his mouth. Interesting. Not militaristic, not going out fighting battles, but actually showing his power and authority through dying for us. And that's very one. The cross and the resurrection was the symbol of real victory, and Revelation doesn't take that away. Revelation emphasizes it, and particularly in these chapters. Let's finish with a quote from Michael Gorman, which perhaps will give us pause to think. I'll give you something to think about as well, if I haven't already. He says this: human beings, even apparently faithful Christians, too often want an almighty deity who will rule the universe with power, preferably on their terms, and with force when necessary. Such a concept of God and of sovereignty induces its adherents to side with this kind of God in the execution of allegedly divine might in the quest for allegedly divine justice. Understanding the reality of the Lamb as Lord, and thus of Lamb power, terminates, or should terminate, all such misconceptions of divine power and justice and of their erroneous human corollaries. Of course, both historically and today, the misconceptions persist. In other words, we're not called to take the world for Jesus by force. He's shown the way. We lay down our lives for the gospel and we conquer. The gospel has the power to change society as it gets the message out. And, isn't it, we look at things in the world and we want God to come and do something, powerful, even violent sometimes, to sort things out. And in fact, God's way has always been the way of Jesus. He has his people who are called to give everything, to lay everything down for the gospel and share that, because that changes people's hearts. And that's how God will win, and has won already, of course. So final thought then. What does all this mean to how we seek to change society? Yeah. What part has protest and politics got in God's plan to change the world through the church? I'm not going to give my opinion. Not important anyway. But your opinion is. I'm not saying there's no easy answer to it, but it's interesting to think about, isn't it? But I'll tell you this, it's not, what we are not called to do is use force or violence. We are called to lay our lives down for the gospel. And that is what God called us to do. God bless you. And see you next time.